Okay, so we're gonna continue doing some reading here. I got a coffee. As always. You see me drinking coffee. Rob and coffee. That's how I introduced the video. I like my coffee. Alright, so we were on this part here about the cross. The cross of Jesus Christ. When he went to that stake, how horrible it was, but how beneficial it was for mankind and the whole of creation. The blood of his cross is what is used to reconcile the universe. And what we know is Christ and him crucified. So the cross does show man's worthlessness. The cross, like a lightning flash, reveals the heart of man. He who hung upon it was the touchstone by which all things may be tested. When he appeared among his people, humanity manifested itself as it really is. He should have been welcomed and honored and adored. By the condemnation of the only one who deserved to live, mankind has condemned itself and sealed its own death warrant. By the shameful crucifixion of the Lord of glory, men made it manifest that they, not he, deserved the death detestable. Oh, that we may learn what we really are in the light of the cross. This will burn out all our pride and prepare the way for peace. And thus it is that reconciliation comes. The cross will abase all into the dust and humble their hearts before the deity and prepare them for the revelation of his love. And this is why I say, having an experience that brings you to the end of yourself is a good thing. And I've had many of them and still do, because God abases us and humbles us by the experience of evil. We know this as believers. The rest of the world don't know it. They just get more and more bitter. And I think bitterness is the worst possible thing ever. I mean, they curse God on a constant basis. We cry out to God. We don't curse God, but we cry out to God in our pain and our suffering. The world curses God because they do not know God. That's the thing. They do not know God. The God of the universe, the God of love, they don't know. And this is why they get bitter in their hearts. And it just causes all kinds of wickedness coming out of the heart of man. So we really knew what we know as believers, being humbled to the dust. But if the cross only revealed what is in man, it could not reconcile the race, but would rather destroy it. Thanks be to God that it also reveals what is in God. It is the full revelation of his love. In it, he seemed to side with man instead of rescuing his beloved from their hate. He sends fire from above into his bones. He makes him to be sin, who knew no sin. He forsakes him instead of the ones who deserve his displeasure. The divine alchemy which transformed the victim of human hate into the sacrifice for their sins, is almost too wonderful for human apprehension. The blood of the cross. The cross was the supreme crisis in universal history, an event unique, unparalleled in the annals of time. Nothing has ever occurred which has such a profound effect upon the world. It will transform an alienated universe into adoring worshipers. That's amazing right there. What the cross will do to the whole universe. It is a permanent and abiding power which will never lose its potency. Today the cross avails to conciliate the world and to reconcile those who receive the conciliation. But this will be by no means exhaust. This will by no means exhaust its power. It will be the basis of all blessing in the eons to come, and will bring immortality and peace to all at the consummation. Death cannot stop its course, for Christ arose, the firstborn, and all for whom he died, and he died for all. Will share his life when death is abolished. The blood of Christ is a most expressive figure of the permanent power of his sufferings. The soul, sensation, feeling, not the life of the flesh, is in the blood. So all our feelings come from the blood pouring through our veins. That's the only reason we have sensation or a soul. And that's what a soul is, your sensation. It's not a separate entity that lives on. It is your feelings. It is your being. It is what you feel every day. Smell, taste, hear, see, all of these sensations are part of the soul, which is in the blood. In the days of old, this was sprinkled in the Holy of Holies once a year on the day of propitiation, and for a 12-month period preserved the potency of the sacrifice. So it is with the suffering of Christ. Thank God it is past, but its potency is permanent. It avails today and will never lose its power. The blood remains, as it were, within the holiest in heaven to witness to his offering. With the blood of his cross, this goes far deeper still. Only here do we have the notable expression. It is not a mere literary variant, but a deliberate endeavor to distinguish between the death of God's Son and the manner of it. This is done because here we have not merely the salvation or the justification of all, but the reconciliation of the universe, the entire universe. It is not a question of sin so much as of offense and enmity. In fact, this passage is concerned with salvation only insofar as it is included in reconciliation. Peace is made by the blood of his cross. The blood is a reminder of its permanence. This blood does not merely remind us of his death and suffering, but of the shame and enmity of man, and the darkness and distance from God endured by him because of the crucifixion. Stoning would have brought death, but would have avoided much of the suffering and the curse of the deity which rested upon the one who hanged upon the tree. The marvelous truth that all will be reconciled to God is based not only on the suffering and death of Christ, but especially on the abject abasement involved in the manner of his death, coupled with the curse which it drew down from above. The cry of the august sufferer, my God, why didst thou forsake me?" finds its answer in the cross. With any other form of death, God would not have forsaken him. He would rather have turned against his murderers. It would have increased the distance and estrangement between God and his creatures. It would have made enmity, not peace. But because he voluntarily placed himself beneath the curse of God for the sake of his enemies, the result was reconciliation. But let us note that the cross is brought in here parenthetically. It is the basis of reconciliation indeed, but by no means includes all that he will do in order to bring back the universe to God. On this basis, he will carry on all of his future work of ruling and judging, and of rousing and vivifying the dead. All of his coming acts will have this grand goal in view, and we will have our share in his work of reconciling God's creatures among the celestials, for we are his complement. As living exemplifications of the power of the cross, we will have our part in the final and effectual peace propaganda. For this reason we read here of the blood of his cross, for its abiding power will be the means at our disposal among the celestials in bringing about perpetual peace. One of the most helpful contrasts between Ephesians and Colossians is on the subject of peace. In Colossians, as we have seen, it is universal in its scope, including not only the earth sinners, but his enemies in the heavens as well. But in Ephesians, it is limited to the believers. It has to do with enmity between the circumcision and the uncircumcision. Ephesians 2:11 through 18. This estrangement inhered in their flesh and in the physical relation of Christ to the circumcision. It found expression in the central wall of the sanctuary, which kept the uncircumcision at a distance from God's dwelling place, and in the decrees issued by the apostles from Jerusalem, that the fruit of peace was a new humanity, so that both the circumcision and the uncircumcision have access in one spirit to the Father. Though based upon the cross, there is nothing there for those outside the household of faith. The peace of Ephesians is in accord with the secret of the epistle, will continue during this administration of grace, but will retire in the following economies, when Israel once more comes to the front on the basis of physical preeminence. But the peace in Colossians, in accord with the secret of Christ, will not only continue throughout the eons, but will embrace all at the consummation. In Ephesians, it is limited to both time and scope. It applies only to the circumcision and uncircumcision in the present era. But in Colossians, it is extended to include those in the heavens as well as those on the earth. All are embraced by it, so that no enmity remains in God's universe. To even list all the passages which have been brought forward to blot out the great truth of the reconciliation of all would lead us too far afield at this time. They have been fully considered and discussed in separate essays. Correct concordant renderings automatically dispose of them, and at the same time confirm the great truth that God will become all in all at the consummation. 1 Corinthians 15:28. May God graciously give us faith to believe it. May our love for his beloved constrain us to receive it. May mistaken translations and other passages not bar our way into the Holy of Holies, beyond the veil of his Aeonian dealings with his creatures. May not the false philosophical terms everlasting and eternal or eternity blind our eyes to the eons, the scenes of God, of the Son's glories, their commencement in love and their consummation in reconciliation. Here we stand on the summit of divine revelation. Here we can see all else below us and see its place in God's purpose. May we not take some lower stand and deny this glorious consummation because it is hid from our gaze by fogs of the lower levels.